When Biden refused to step aside and not run again, he was supposed to be that bridge. He backed off on that promise due to arrogance. And then he drops out after a catastrophic debate performance. And they set Kamala Harris up to fail. That was a 3-month campaign, and she was supposed to introduce herself to the American people. No wonder people were Googling, did Joe Biden drop out?
So, it looks like some people are still in denial about Kamala Harris's crushing loss in last year's election. But Bill Maher, he's not playing along. On a recent episode of his show, a few Democrats tried to spin Kamala's performance and paint her as some kind of victim, but Maher wasn't having any of it. He made one thing very clear: Kamala didn't just lose, she earned it. Bill Maher looks around the panel and says this:
everything the candidates, especially the Democrats, do to get voters annoys them. The constant texting. Did you get the texts like from Tim Walz every 5 minutes? And the, like always begging for money and knocking on doors. We've got people knocking on doors. People don't want knocking on your door. Who in this day and age wants someone knocking on? Kids don't even like it when a phone call? That's like too much of a invasion of their privacy.
And with that, Maher basically hits a nerve that's been pulsing for years. Let's face it, voters are burnt out. Democrats in particular have mastered the art of being accidentally annoying. Between relentless fundraising texts, emails that read like guilt trips, and volunteers showing up like Jehovah's Witnesses with campaign flyers, it feels less like political outreach and more like a coordinated ambush. And honestly, he wasn't off the mark. The criticism wasn't just about Kamala, it was about the strategy behind her. Democrats didn't come in with a solid, relatable message. They came in with hashtags and moral superiority. And when that flopped, did they adjust? Of course not. They cranked the volume. Here, Sarah Isker jumps in with a sharp take.
You know, there was a 2014 study that showed that Fortune 500 companies were more likely to pick a female CEO if the company was struggling, basically setting women up for the big job, but to also fail. If they did well, fine. But if they failed, like, look, we have a female CEO while failing. And that's what I feel like they did to Kamala Harris.
She doesn't stop there. Sarah goes on and makes this point.
When Biden refused to step aside and not run again, he was supposed to be that bridge. He backed off on that promise due to arrogance. And then he drops out after a catastrophic debate performance. And they set Kamala Harris up to fail. That was a 3-month campaign, and she was supposed to introduce herself to the American people. No wonder people were Googling, did Joe Biden drop out?
Now pause. Let's unpack that. Because according to Isker, Kamala Harris was just, what? Plucked out of nowhere? Handed the job like some unprepared intern? That's rich, considering she was the vice president for 4 very public years. This wasn't some mystery figure suddenly thrust into the spotlight. Kamala had her shot, and the entire nation was watching. And yet, somehow, she never clicked. And to his credit, Bill Maher wasn't buying any of it. He cuts through the fluff and fires back. No sugarcoating.
And so,
No. You're saying 3 months wasn't long enough?
I mean,
It was too long. It was long enough.
It was long enough.
if they had a primary,
Sure, it's not that they didn't have time to introduce. They met someone and didn't like them.
But then, Sarah Isker presses on, doubling down on her point.
if they had had a primary, they wouldn't have picked her. And if they had,
That's
she would have been
different.
able to
Yes.
rough out those edges that then she basically has to start from scratch with a campaign team she didn't hire that didn't like her, right? It was his team. And so I wonder if that next Democratic person, maybe someone's not even on our radar yet. Because frankly, when you look at the history of who's there's 2 types. The one who waited in line, who was next in line, and then there's the one who comes out. That's Obama, that's Clinton, that's Reagan to some extent.
And here we go again with the poor Kamala narrative. According to Isker, Harris was some helpless placeholder, tossed into a failing campaign with a team that didn't support her. She was just set up to take the fall while the family ducked accountability. Sounds dramatic, right? Almost noble. But let's be honest, that version of events skips a few chapters. Kamala didn't enter the race as some underdog. She was one of the most celebrated, defended, and media-sheltered figures in modern politics. Every tough question was replaced with praise. Every stumble brushed aside. If she was set up for anything, it was a hero's welcome, not a trap. That being not enough, John Heilman jumps in, tossing his hat into the excuse ring.
If you're the sitting vice president for a president who has, throughout his entire term in office, been sitting at about somewhere between a 35 and 40% approval rating. People view the Biden administration as a failure. We can have a long discussion about whether they are right about that, about the economy, but the perceptions of the economy were that people thought inflation was too high, people thought we were on the wrong track, 75% wrong track numbers, and this huge inflation overhang. You're the sitting vice president, and you get put on elevated to the top of the ticket 107 days ahead of the election. I think that is a very high degree of difficulty put on anybody, and I do not think she is the perfect candidate. I tend to agree with Sarah that probably in a fully litigated primary, she probably would not have been the Democratic nominee, but we'll never know that.
And just like that, the excuse machine kicks into overdrive. Now it's Heilman's turn to spin the Kamala narrative, and the irony, almost too much to bear. This is the same guy who spent the better part of Biden's term cheerleading Bidenomics like it was the second coming of FDR. But suddenly now, it's safe to say, yeah, okay, maybe the economy wasn't that great. Right on time, just in case Kamala needs a little cushion for a messy campaign. And so, according to Heilman, the logic goes, it's not Kamala's fault she can't connect. It's not her messaging, her history, or her awkward public appearances. Nope, it's the economy. It's Biden's record. It's the calendar. At this point, Bill Maher, for his part, wasn't buying it. You could practically see the steam coming out of his ears as he listened to Heilman and Ishker twist themselves into rhetorical twists just to explain why Kamala's weak performance isn't hers.
That situation elevated that late in the campaign.
Why? Needed to run away from
Bill, I don't know if you know this, but the vice president of the United States is basically shoved in a broom closet for 3.5 years.
I know.
Like, you couldn't.
She was more popular in there.
Yes, well.
I mean, this idea that in a mass media age, that 107 days is not long enough to know somebody.
You are way overestimating the American people in terms of what they're.
Now hang on. Bill Maher's about to step in again. But before he does, let's get something clear. Kamala Harris wasn't exiled to some political basement or locked away from the spotlight like her critics claim. Let's kill that myth right now. She had chances, big ones. She was reportedly offered a sit-down on Joe Rogan's podcast, a platform that could have helped her reach millions of skeptical voters directly. She passed. Why? Probably because tough, unscripted conversations weren't exactly her comfort zone. And when she did show up for interviews, it was a whole lot of nervous giggling, awkward deflections, and sentences that started somewhere and never really landed. So no, Kamala wasn't pushed off the stage. She was the stage. She had the mic, the camera, the moment. She just couldn't deliver. And that right there is why voters didn't warm up to her. Not because she was silenced, but because when the spotlight was on, she blinked.
But you're either the person who's Googling the day before, did Biden drop out, or in a week. Did anyone in this audience not know enough about Kamala Harris pretty much after a week to make a decision? Yeah, it's ridiculous. We just get sicker of them.
He then makes this final point. Listen.
So how are you going to tell people they can't talk about politics?
What?
How with free speech that I know you love?
Yeah.
How are you going to limit people's ability to run for office?
I'm not limiting. We're not making a law.
Bill, isn't there somehow money involved in politics?
Get rid of super PACs by making it no limits, full disclosure. 24-hour disclosure.
We could fix democracy in a minute. Get rid of gerrymandering, get rid of money in politics, get rid of the electoral college. No, none of that is. We're going to keep working with this constipated system that we live with.
And that's when Bill nails a point that might have gone over some heads. In today's digital world, You do not need years of speeches to know a politician. You need one moment, one viral clip, one quote that hits. And Bill's right. People made up their minds about Kamala Harris long ago. You saw her on stage, heard her in interviews, watched how she handled pressure. That's all it took. Just look at Trump. Agree with him or not, you knew what he stood for. Make America Great Again wasn't just a slogan, it was a rally cry. It was a blunt, clear, and everywhere. Now ask yourself, can you recall even one message from Kamala Harris that cuts through the noise like that? One idea she stood on, repeated, and drove home to voters? Share your thoughts in the comments section below.